So, Jason, I have a question for you. Are the most effective leaders servers of people?
Hmm. Dang, Janelle. I don't know. But you can find out next on the World of Wisdom.
Stay tuned.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the World of Wisdom. My name is Jason Davis, and I'm here with my co pilot, Janelle Reid. What is going on, Janelle?
Hello, Jason. I am excited to be here with you, and I'm excited about the world of wisdom. We are going to get into some amazing things today. So, I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. And folks, you might be thinking to yourself, like, the world of wisdom, like, what is that? You heard the fancy little intro and you understand why we do what we do. But then there's this nebulous cloud thing called wisdom. It's like, you don't know if it's like a magic carpet that swoops in and helps you, but Janelle and I want to bring some insight that wisdom is a little bit more simple than what you think. In fact, when you look at scripture, because Janelle and I are people of faith, wisdom actually, it's a proverb. Wisdom actually cries out in the streets. It cries aloud from the rooftops. That's what certain translations say. So, what we want to do is open your eyes to the wisdom that's available to you as followers of Christ. We can tap into the wisdom of God, but there's a big but, right, Janelle? We got to look for it. We got to look for it.
Isn't it so amazing that you just said something? We have to look for it. We'll go look for how to find a job. We'll go learn to look for, how to do something, how to learn something, but we'll go out to look for something out on the outside versus tap into what we already have. And sometimes we overlook the very things that we already have in us that can help us move us forward. It's
Mm,
already sometimes in us. And like you said, wisdom cries out in the streets. And in these streets, we go looking for everything else but wisdom. We overlook that. We overlook it.
we sure do. And Janelle, that's perfect that you set it up that way because one of the areas that a lot of us overlook is in the workplace. At work, we're so much on our grind, trying to get the paper, trying to take care of the family, and we're trying to run after all these things, and we miss it. It's right up underneath our nose, right, Janelle?
We miss it
So,
all the time, but we miss it in so many different ways. And you know how one of the big indicators of showing us of how we missed it is the great resignation.
mm,
If you don't know anything else, that has literally exploded for both the talent, organizations, companies, right? The great resignation. And if that was actually foretold, but that is a huge indicator of how we got to where we are today, and how even wisdom, even in the great resignation, has come forth and manifested in different ways, and how businesses have had to tap into wisdom. They've had to tap into wisdom, and even the talent has had to tap into wisdom, right? But it wasn't initially seen that way. So this is going to be some really good stuff that we're going to talk about today.
absolutely. So, folks, Janelle and I were talking offline. We're so excited. And when you talked about that, Janelle, about what it really means and how there had to be a shift. This was foretold years ago by a lot of different, certain consulting firms and whatnot. And now we're here. Now, none of us knew that the catalyst would be a pandemic. And, there's a crazy time. There's this culmination of racial injustice, economic uncertainty, and COVID-19. And then that whole combination caused people to think differently and say, you know what? When it comes to earning my income and what kind of company I want to work for, or if I want to start a business, people really just started taking and owning that probably a little bit more than ever in history. And so redefining prestige and then this war on talent, Janelle, let's talk a little bit more about that.
Well, first of all, yes, the Great Resignation has taught us, if nothing else, that if you don't treat talent well, it will walk out the door. But even more than that, it has also taught the art of understanding that your resume, and I've taught this even before, right? The Great Resignation, your resume is not about writing a whole bunch of accolades about yourself. Your resume is literally the sum total of the value that you bring. And what the Great Resignation has taught us is that there's a difference in the level of prestige of having and understanding your value and your worth. Because people quitting jobs without having another one is a great indicator of, oh, wait, I know my worth. I know my
Mhm.
value. I know you need me more than I need you right now. And there's competition
Yeah.
for it, right? And so now the name of the game is how are employers and organizations competing? But the real depth of it is, right, the resume versus the prestige. But now what's happening is that even with all of that great prestige, all of that is people having to understand, learning what to do, right, when they don't know what to do. Companies
Yes.
had to master that, right, in this great resignation in so many different ways because now they've had to think faster. They've had to be
Hmm.
more proactive, right? The pandemic has taught us, right? Okay, now you have to, you have to have a whole new virtual space. How do you work smarter and not harder with less people by building your talent all at the same time and paying them more, right? And
Hmm.
so now I feel like the great resignation is an evolving movement where it is growing talent but also allowing people to see their worth and really setting the stage for companies and organizations to level up. Level.
Absolutely. I love it, Janelle. And part of that leveling up that you're talking about, it relates to skill sets and looking for talent in non-traditional spaces and places. You and I talked about how customer service was looked at one way, but actually, when you think about customer service, especially if you work in the restaurant business or fast food retail, or even people who sell products, like who work at for a phone carrier, there's two things here: customer service, and then the ability to run a system. Those skill sets are being more valued than ever, because the old way, Janelle, was, well, Jason, Janelle, you didn't have this certain degree, you don't have this certain years of experience. But what one thing people forget is, in every business, there's a people component.
Yes.
And people who wait on people at tables, waiters, chefs, the people who work at franchises, or sell a product, not a service. Don't worry, service people, we're not knocking you. We're just using an
No, not
example.
you. No,
But
me.
people who sell a product, they know how that product works, and it's not customized. They sell it the same way every time. That can be systematized. But in the way that it's systematized, they also provide service, because they deal with so many different personality types throughout the day. So they
Yes.
know how to interact with people. They know how to meet customer needs and provide the service. And then they also can take a system, because we talk about innovation and ingenuity. So if you got all these startups and fancy people, look, I got my system. I did the market research. I don't need you to change that. I just need you to run the thing I need you to run. Well, folks that work in that environment, they understand that. Let's unpack that for a second,
So I think about that blind spots, right? So
Mm,
businesses had to run together and figure out how are we going to continue to function in this now virtual space and right in this pandemic. And I think that businesses definitely overlooked a lot of things, they overthought a lot of things, and they underheard a lot of things.
mm,
And your example when you were talking about customer service, right? And I think about the example of the company, the restaurant chain Chick-fil-A, right? You have Chick-fil-A, who is legendary, known for their great, amazing customer service, right? And now you have multi-million dollar companies going to hire and even poach Chick-fil-A managers, anyone that works there. Why? Because you talked about that framework of customer service. Because customer service is now the framework and the blueprint and the foundation of all that businesses are doing, especially in the virtual space. And I look at that example and how businesses and I look at it how we do that often, and I can relate to that myself, right? How it's so easy for me to overlook, for me to
Mhm.
dismiss all the things that I've learned being right in corporate America and now being right a business owner. It's so easily for me to dismiss that, to overlook it, or even minimize it a lot of times, right? And that's how, when I think about wisdom and knowledge and how I've gained things, right? I think about how I've overlooked, how I've underheard, and how I've been very dismissive of certain things. But at the end of the day, what reminds me or what pulls me into, hey, Janelle, you know how to do that, right? That
Mhm.
knowing what to do when you don't know what to do, or being able to pivot very easily, right? And I think about the industries that have had to pivot, customer service being one of the biggest ones, and how they've been able to get back on their feet, but not just get back on their feet for the sake of doing that, but how they're actually developing people to thrive to do it.
Mm.
Because at the end of the day, the great resignation has taught us people aren't just leaving for the money. They're
Mhm.
leaving for their value, and they're leaving because they know they are worth more.
Absolutely. Folks, you want to make sure you're taking notes. Janelle, she dropped some serious gold. And what we're giving you is not just, a lot of times people would classify what we're talking about as soft skills, things like working with, understanding your personality type and, doing your disc and your anagram, which by the way, that's important. I would if I were you.
Of
And I don't
course.
prefer one over the other. It just, we're like an onion. You peel back the layer, you learn something new
Yeah.
about yourself. But these three things we do often in the workplace. So whether you are looking for talent or whether you're already in the market working in corporate, or if you're an entrepreneur, these are the little things. This is what we mean by wisdom cries out in the street. Overlooking something. When it comes to talent, as Janelle was talking about, when you overlook talent, it's because you're taking a preconceived notion of the way things were always done. That's what's known as a sacred cow. That's another one of those corporate terms. Well, Jason, Janelle, it's always ever been done that way. Well, that's fine until something changes. Enter the great resignation. So what happens when a degree, and we're proponents of education, we're educated folks ourselves, but what happens when that's no longer the the top thing to find talent? What happens when you can find just as good of talent from unlikely sources? That's overlooking. If you're an existing employee, if you're an entrepreneur out in the marketplace, we're talking about that situational awareness. You're in a meeting, you're watching a manager and a direct report. You're watching their interaction in the meeting, and then you notice somebody's a little bit more quiet than what they used to be. Somebody's a little standoffish. Situational awareness, you overlooked that. So when it came time to make a decision in business, they did something that was least expected when you could have spoken up in the meeting or in the interaction, asked the question, hey, Jason, hey, Janelle, you normally say something in the meeting. What's going on there? That's what we mean by overlooking. So having situational awareness, and that starts with being a good listener, right?
Yes, absolutely. Being a good listener. Jason, you brought up some really amazing points. I love, first of all, Jason, I love just how we just connect and vibe, because wisdom is our passion. Passionate about
Yes.
making sure that people have the same, are tapping into it.
Hmm.
It's not that you don't have it. It's not that it's not obtainable. It's that it's how do I tap into that? And I love the example that you gave, because some of the things that I am teaching corporations and businesses about is the overlooking, the perception, right? And even the
Hmm.
thinking, right?
Yeah.
We're both educated, both educated individuals. But what's happening in the market, on the war on talent, is that employers have only looked at the lens of talent through one singular focus or lens:
Hmm.
your greed, experience in that industry and field, right? And so now what I've been really spending time teaching them is, okay, you have to widen your net.
Mm-hmm.
To widen your net, because if nothing else, not just because of the great resignation, not just because of the pandemic, but you're going to have to learn how to cultivate talent in
Yes.
a different and meaningful way, which means that you're going to have to even build it. Sometimes you may even have to get it in first, right? And one of the examples is I love teaching this to some of my clients, where it's okay, let's rip apart what you think you know of what
Mm-hmm.
you need, and really look at your metrics in your business and look at the indicators to say, I get that you need a business analyst, right? But there are
Mm-hmm.
opportunities with job sharing and market development where you can marry them both together to get the experience of what you need. And instead of trying to go out and try to find five different positions, why don't you create it? Cultivate
Mm-hmm.
talent, right? So if you're not overlooking, yes, that person only may have some particular level of experience, but can you build that? Can you actually cultivate that? Do you have that level of experience already inside internally that you can pivot and level that, right? Job sharing is also a big opportunity to level up in business, because it gives you the opportunity to build your internal talent market structure. You don't have to buy the talent, you can build the talent, right?
Mm.
If you build it, they will come.
I
So
love it.
important that you look, right, and that's what wisdom is about, right? It's looking and okay, what have I learned, what do I have, what am I not maximizing on, what am I overlooking, what am I overthinking, what do I have at my disposal and my arsenal that I could be using, that I'm already equipped with. So this is just really good. I love it, I love it.
Janelle, you're sparking the fire there. So we
The
have the
fire is
over.
starting, the fire is starting.
Yes. And folks, scripture tells us in the book of James, be quick to listen. If you listen long enough, people will tell you what they're looking for and what they need, but you got to listen and you got to be positioned in the right place. Switch up what you're doing. If you change your thinking, you change your life. That's Romans 12:2. Be not conformed to this world, to the patterns of the world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind. That starts with God. When you follow God, as a child of God, you have access to wisdom. So that means you can ask him, and the Lord can say, hey, what about that over there? Oh, let me ask that question. I love it, Janelle, because then you have the overlooking and then the overthinking. So we talked about situational awareness, but then, folks, practicality.
Yes.
We live in an information age. There's so much data available. And I'm a data guy, Janelle. I like stuff. I love it. But here's the thing, Janelle. Data is getting produced at such a rate. Even if you love it, you can't keep up with it. So what does that mean? You have to make sense of things. And I'm not just talking about data. You got to make sense of life. We're getting hit with all types of things in the marketplace. So what wisdom does is practicality. Practicality. How do I take something and apply it? Like 2 plus 2 equals 4. Well, how do I use that? Right.
Yep.
So it's not just the knowing, which is information. Then there's comprehension, which is the understanding. So then how do I take the information, comprehend it, and then go use it? How do I sit in a meeting, understand what's being said in the meeting, and then go apply it to what I'm doing? If I'm an entrepreneur, how do I take a trend that's growing in business or penetrating a new market or vertical? How do I take that, comprehend where it's going, understand the economic signs and signals, my target market, and then move? And then under hearing, my goodness, overlooking, overthinking, because overthinking leads to procrastination
Oh,
and
yeah.
not taking action. But then under hearing, because we're set in our own ways, somebody says something and it just goes right. How many times Janelle just goes whoop, right over the
And over
head, right over the
the
head?
It does. It honestly does. And at the end of the day, are you hearing or are you listening? Are
Mm.
you hearing or are you listening? And there is a difference, right? I can hear. It's kind of like that Rush Hour movie. Are you hearing the words that are coming out of my mouth, right?
Yes,
Hear, and sometimes we hear wisdom, but we're not listening to it. We haven't shut our minds to absorb what is being spoken, what is actually being said, and really being able to quiet our minds, right, to be able to really listen. Actively listening means you're pausing, you're stopping, you're reflecting, you're taking it in, right? And when you're actively listening, you open yourself up so that you're not overthinking, right? So that you're not
absolutely.
overlooking. and that you position yourself to be able to receive and tap in to that learning agility, right?
Hmm.
Knowing what to do when you don't know what to do, and being able to listen for the cry of that wisdom in the streets. You'll be able to hear it, but then you'll be able to absorb it and actually be able to listen to it. And when you can listen to it, that's where the application comes in. Because now you become positioned to be a doer of the word. You can apply the wisdom of what you have. So I'm so excited about this, Jason. I hope this is something that has blessed you, because it blesses me. It always does. Every time I'm around you, I always get blessed. Shout out, to all those. Listen, get with people and surround yourself with not just like-minded people, but sometimes people who have different experiences and know more than you do. You know why? Because it makes you a more well-rounded person, and that's what wisdom is. So
Yes. If you like this, folks, coming in 2022, The World of Wisdom on our YouTube web series, The World of Wisdom with Janelle Reid and Jason Davis. Come learn about the wisdom of God that you have access to in the marketplace and living skillfully and making decisions when you don't know what to do. You can also follow us via our social media. You can catch me, Jason.N.Davis, Mr. Fortify on Instagram. Janelle, why don't you tell them where to
you
find
can
you?
find me on Instagram at Janelle L. Reid on Instagram. You can follow me, and also Divine Career Solutions, both on Instagram. But this was amazing, Jason. I had such an amazing time today. And I'm looking forward to the world of wisdom, and I hope you guys are too. So stay tuned for 2020. We're coming at you with more wisdom.
Yep, the world of wisdom at gmail.com with the wisdom with a Z, the world of
Oh,
wisdom with a Z at gmail.com. The best is yet to come. We'll see you soon.
see you soon.